My name is Leonard Kozianski. I'm an artist. This is my studio. Welcome to my studio. And I'd like to talk to you today about navigating change, about reassessing a project as we work on it, as we embrace new possibilities, as we get involved in this, fairly dynamic world of art creation and art management. And sometimes our projects are simple and sometimes they're very complex and involve a lot of different people. But I'm going to talk to you today about this subject, and I'm going to use as an example one of the paintings that I created recently called The Sunday Painter. And this is oil on canvas, done in 2023. And Sunday Painter, the title, Sunday Painter is kind of a code word for an amateur. And, professional artists work every day. Amateurs work on the weekends. And so they're the Sunday painters. Though some of them are very talented, and their work comes up for auctions hundreds of years later. So they're not to be disparaged. But this is the painting. It began with a brainstorming session here on a sketchbook page with a series of thumbnail studies. And these are all about 1 by 2 inches. They're done in a ballpoint pen. And the different ideas, different suggestions, compositions, different compositional possibilities that I was thinking about. And, it's hard to know whether something is going to make a good painting or not unless you can actually see it. Art is something that we create by doing. And it isn't until we actually start doing and making that we understand its creative potential. And so here I've laid out, a number of ideas, and I'm looking at them and saying, which ones are going to be good paintings and which ones won't be. And so I decided on this one as what I would do for my next painting. It seemed to have a nice balance from side to side and front to back. And it's not like the other ideas are rejected. I will return to this page and probably take some of these other ideas and develop them. But I'll make some changes, make some additions and subtractions, and then they can become paintings themselves. Well, after doing the small little thumbnail brainstorming session, then I made a larger drawing. And this is about 5 by 8 inches in my sketchbook. And I'm adding more details. I'm becoming more specific about the lights and the darks and, what exactly is going to be included in this picture. And, and here's that drawing. And, this is a drawing that takes about half a day or a day to make. And I'm able to make major decisions. And then once I have something that I like, that I think is going to be a good painting, then I can draw a pencil grid over the top of that. I draw a corresponding grid on the canvas, and then that helps me to blow up the sketch to a larger painting. I'm not a slave to the grid. Because as you make something bigger, you have to add more to it. You have to add more information. And you can make a lot of different changes because you're going from a pen and ink drawing to an oil painting, and that suggests certain possibilities. Here you can see those piers, the fishermen on the pier, those docks, the water, the boat, and then there was that little boat up on the land turned over. A lot of these elements would be excluded as the creative process, as I evaluated this painting as it became more and more complete. And here the painting is in an early stage, just kind of roughed in. The colors are roughed in. Not a lot of texture is applied. But there's still a lot of work being done with the clouds. This is about a month into the picture. So I spent a lot of time. The clouds are fairly complete. I like the way it's developing, but certain things are bothering me about it. Those piers, the dock things, they seem kind of distracting. And the clouds are just not quite enough. I mean, they look good, but there's just not quite enough there. But I've invested a lot of time in this picture. How am I going to experiment with changes at this stage? Well, one of the ways I did that, or the way I did it with this picture, was I photographed the painting, and then I printed out some of those photographs. And then using a ballpoint pen and a whiteout pen, I drew on top of those photographs. And that, I created these proxies for the painting, which I was then able to experiment with changes, different ideas, different possibilities, now that I could see what this painting was starting to look like. Here's another one, and you can see here I've eliminated those piers, those docks down below. I like the way the water was starting to look. I've added more contrast to the clouds and made them a lot brighter in the foreground and darker as you move towards the background. I'm just using a ballpoint pen and a whiteout pen to very economically make changes, and I could do this in, half an hour or an hour without destroying what I have spent so many days creating up to this point. And this is the finished painting. The Sunday Painter. We're looking down through the clouds onto this suburban landscape. The clouds, these billowy clouds, are rolling in over the landscape and darkening the land underneath. Here's the artist at his easel, and it's an folding outdoor easel. I have one myself. And, it's great to go outside and paint outdoors. And here's this artist doing that. And, we look closely at that painting that he's working on. Well, he's painting the picture that he's part of. And here he is, he's right in the middle of the picture, but, he wasn't there in the beginning. So, his presence was suggested by a reassessment, of this dynamic process that I'm involved with. And, I have to embrace these ideas as they come up. How do I draw him? I have to do research. I have to go back to an earlier stage. I have to go back in time. I have to retrace my steps and go back to my sketchbook and, create some drawings of an artist at an easel so that I can add it to the picture. And so I can't be afraid to, step back, to regress or go back in time to an earlier phase of the process in order to do the necessary research to add something to the picture. Now here's the lower right or lower left of the picture, and you can see I've gotten rid of those docks, those piers. There is a fisherman there. I really like the way the water looked. It's kind of like a more of a surreal, edgy water, and I like the texture of it. I like the color of it. It's a little slightly threatening, and it contrasts really nicely to the texture of the grass and the texture of the clouds, which are very smooth and soft. So the combination of the contrast between those three I thought was very effective. And here's the right side of the picture. If you remember one of the earlier studies, I had the birds flying through the sky. But that seemed too distracting. There was too much attention focused just on those birds. So I brought them down. I created these electrical wires and then had the birds perched on the wires. I've always been fascinated by birds perching on electrical wires. How do they maintain their balance and why don't they get electrocuted? But what do they look like? Well, again, I had to go back and be willing to do more research. I'm learning as I'm doing. I'm learning as I create. I've never created birds like that before. How do you draw those? Well, I had to, sit down with my sketchbook again and learn how to create birds, how to draw birds sitting on a telephone wire or an electrical wire. I have to be willing to go back like that to do the necessary research in order to make those additions to the painting. And a lot of times, people, if you're involved in some projects, like an accounting project, well, you hate to have to go back. Okay, it's like you want to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But if you're involved in a very dynamic, creative process, you have to be willing to embrace change and to reassess your image. And so the progress in painting can be like, A, B, C, F, P, L, J, K, X, back to C, over to G. So we're moving back and forth in this creative process. But that's the way creativity is, because we're learning by doing. We learn how to draw these things, how to paint these things as we make them. It's not like we know in advance. This is the middle of the picture. We're looking down through the clouds and we can see that darkened landscape underneath. The clouds are light and billowy, but they cast these dark shadows, and people put their lights on in the middle of the day. You can see that with that car there. And in Ohio, where I grew up, you get these thunderstorms come rolling in the afternoon in the summertime. And, a beautiful sunny day suddenly becomes almost dark as night, and people are turning their lights on, and it rains and it thunders, and then an hour later, the clouds disappear, and, it's really a beautiful day again. So I wanted to, capture that or express that idea in this painting. Now here we are in the upper left of the picture, and here are those billowy clouds, those cumulus storm clouds, which look so beautiful from above, but which can be so threatening when you're underneath them. What I like here also is a sense of space that's created as we go from those warmer clouds over there on the left to the cooler, darker clouds on the right. So we go from almost like a tan colored cloud to a blue cloud in the distance. And that helps to create a sense of space. And here we're on the right side, we also get a sense of time, because up close in the foreground, it's kind of very sunny and there's a lot of light. And then as we go back, it gets darker and darker until in the distance is a night sky and there's the crescent moon. So this painting doesn't just express a passage in space, it also expresses a passage in time from earlier to later. Again, that's part of sort of the surrealist style in that I'm trying to express more than is just possible with a sort of like a visual snapshot of a scene. I'm trying to express the completeness of the experience that we might have with it. And here's the finished painting. The Sunday Painter. Oil on canvas, 26 high, 42 inches wide, done in 2023. And again, it's a surrealist painting. It's a combination of the conscious and the unconscious mind. And it also required me to be open to transformations and changes in the process of making the image. I had to create proxies that allowed me to experiment with different ideas. I had to be willing to back up to earlier phases and do sketches in my sketchbook to do research on things and on possibilities that hadn't been suggested early on. And so in the creative process, we're not just taking an idea and projecting it out. We take our ideas and we use them to create this thing. And it's the thing that is, that is the art. Not our ideas. It's the interaction of our ideas with these physical materials that creates the art. But in that interaction of our ideas with the materials, transformations take place because we see what our ideas look like in physical manifestations. And then once we see that, we have to be able to, reevaluate our ideas, reassess things, pivot, change, do research, make proxies, do changes in an economical form before we, change that larger project and possibly destroy, weeks of work. Well, thank you for watching this video about embracing change and navigating change in the creation of a complex creative project. If you wouldn't mind, like the video, add a comment, please subscribe. I read all the comments. And the comments really do help me make more of these in the future.
If you like this video, be sure to subscribe, like, and share.
And don't forget to ring the bell.